Welcome to the deep dive. You're here with us today as we uh, unravel the story of a creature many of you likely share your homes with, the domestic cat, Felis catus.
That's right.
We've gathered, well, a wealth of information to explore how these fascinating animals transitioned from wild hunters to the companions, curled up on our sofas. Our goal, to really dig into what makes cats so unique and the surprisingly deep connection they've established with us.
Exactly. We've got a pretty comprehensive set of materials that look at everything from their ancient origins and biological quirks to their complex social lives and their rather significant role in the world around us, both indoors and out.
And believe me, even if you're a lifelong cat person, there are bound to be some surprises in store.
Oh, definitely.
We're talking about a domestication history that might predate even ancient Egypt. They're almost, unbelievable hearing capabilities.
Incredible range.
And the ongoing puzzle of why they sometimes leave presents for us.
Yes, the little gifts. Always a mystery.
We'll also be scratching beneath the surface of some of the more curious aspects of cat lore, from old superstitions to their impact on local wildlife.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with something fundamental. The very word we use for them.
Right. The word cat itself, it has a history that's surprisingly layered. The most probable origin points to the late Latin term catus, which appeared around the 6th century. What's really interesting is the suggestion that this Latin word itself might have come from an African language.
From Africa? Really?
Yeah, think about the Nubian word kadisca for a wildcat and the Nobian term cadiz. These could be related or even, ancestral words. It highlights how even a simple noun can travel across cultures and time.
Wow. So the word cat itself potentially embarked on this journey from Africa to Latin and then into our modern language. That's a fascinating connection. Were there any other ideas about where the name might have come from?
There are indeed. Some theories propose a path from ancient Germanic languages into Latin and then further into Greek, Syriac, and Arabic.
There are even potential links to the Uralic language family, with similarities to words like Northern Sami Gafi, meaning female stoat, and Hungarian Hulgi, which means lady, but also, interestingly, female stoat.
Huh. A stoat.
Yeah. And the Proto-Uralic word Kawe, for a female furred animal, is another possibility. It seems many ancient cultures encountered these creatures and developed their own ways of naming them, perhaps with some echoing sounds across different language groups.
It really makes you wonder about those initial encounters that led to these names. And what about the more affectionate terms we use? Puss, or pussycat, for example. Where do those come from?
Puss starts appearing in the 16th century, and it may have come from the Dutch word pose, or the Low German puskate.
Ah, okay.
You see similar forms in other languages too, like Lithuanian puij and Irish puisin. The exact origin is still a bit unclear, but it's quite plausible that it's onomatopoeic. A sound people used to call a cat that simply stuck as a name.
Like a universal kitty, 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 that just became a word. That's quite charming. And we have different terms for different kinds of cats, don't we? It's not just cat for every feline.
Absolutely. A male cat is typically called a tom or a tomcat, and if he's been neutered, you might hear him referred to as a jib.
A jib? Never heard that one.
Yeah, it's less common now. A female cat is a queen, although some specify that this term only applies to unstayed females when they're in heat. You might also hear a spayed female called a molly.
Okay, queen or molly. Got it.
And of course, a young cat is a kitten, which had an older, now rarely used term in early modern English. Catling.
Catling. Sounds a bit Shakespearean.
It does, doesn't it? Finally, when you see a group of cats together, you can refer to them as a clowder, a glaring, or sometimes a colony.
A glaring of cats. I like the imagery there. Okay, so we know what we call them, but where do these creatures fit into the vast web of life on Earth? Let's explore their taxonomy and evolutionary history.
Right. Scientifically, the domestic cat we recognize today is Felis catus, a name given by Carl Linnaeus way back in 1758.
Linnaeus, the father of taxonomy.
Exactly. There were some earlier proposed names, like Felis gatus domesticus, highlighting their domesticated status, and even the rather intriguing Felis demon for a black cat from the Transcaucasus, which turned out to be just a regular domestic cat.
Felis demon, wow! Giving a black cat a scientific name hinting at something demonic, it's easy to see how superstitions might have taken root.
Absolutely. But the current scientific classification is quite firm, isn't it?
It seems so.
Yes. In 2003, the International Commission on Zoological Nomenclature, essentially the official body that governs how we name animals, scientifically made it clear. The domestic cat is its own distinct species, Felis catus.
Okay.
And when we look at their evolutionary history, research from 2007 strongly indicates that our domesticated feline friends descended from the African wildcat, Felis libica.
The African wildcat.
That's the one. This conclusion came from analyzing DNA samples from domestic cats all around the globe. In fact, in 2017, the IUCN Cat Classification Task Force formally endorsed this, solidifying Felis catus as the proper designation. So, your cozy house cat shares a direct lineage with the African wildcat.
That's quite a transformation. How far back does this evolutionary story stretch?
Well, the Felidae family, which includes all cats from your house tabby to a majestic tiger, shares a common ancestor that lived roughly 10 to 15 million years ago.
10 to 15 million, wow.
Yeah, a long time. The cat family's evolutionary branching really accelerated in Asia during the Miocene epoch, somewhere between 8 and 14 million years ago. Analyzing mitochondrial DNA, that's the DNA passed down through the mother's line, really useful for tracing evolutionary relationships across all cat species, points to a similar time frame for this diversification.
Okay.
The genus Felis, which includes the smaller cats like the wildcat and our domestic cat, diverged from the other cat lineages about 6 to 7 million years ago. So a long and distinguished family history indeed.
And it's interesting that while the wild members of the Felis genus evolved through natural selection, our Felis catus took a different evolutionary route, guided by human interaction.
Exactly. The wild Felis species evolved through what's called sympatric or parapatric speciation, basically, diverging in the same or neighboring geographical areas.
Right.
The domestic cat, on the other hand, is a result of artificial selection by humans. Despite this different path, domestic cats and their closest wild ancestors are genetically very similar. They're both diploid, meaning they have 2 sets of chromosomes with a total of 38 chromosomes.
38, okay.
And they share roughly the same number of genes, around 20,000. Ultimately, both nuclear and mitochondrial DNA evidence firmly establishes the African wildcat as the closest ancestor to our domestic companions.
From wild hunter to fireside companion, it's a remarkable journey. Let's delve into how this domestication actually unfolded. It wasn't an overnight change, was it?
Not at all. It was a gradual process, likely spanning thousands of years. For a long time, the prevailing theory was that cat domestication began in ancient Egypt, where they were certainly highly regarded starting around 3100 BC.
Yeah, you always see cats in Egyptian art.
Exactly. But more recent archaeological discoveries have pushed that timeline considerably further back. The oldest known evidence of the taming of an African wildcat comes from a Neolithic burial site in Cyprus.
Cyprus?
Yes, dating all the way back to 7500 to 7200 BC.
Wow, that's much earlier than Egypt. How did a wildcat end up on an island like that?
Well, given that there were no native land mammals on Cyprus at that time, the most plausible explanation is that the early inhabitants of this village brought the wildcat, along with other wild mammals, to the island from the Middle Eastern mainland.
Ah, so people brought them over.
It seems so. This strongly suggests that the initial attraction and eventual taming likely occurred in the Fertile Crescent. The theory is that African wildcats were drawn to early human settlements by the abundance of rodents, particularly the house mouse. Neolithic farmers, with their stored grains, unintentionally created an ideal feeding ground for these wildcats.
So it seems like it was a mutually beneficial relationship right from the very beginning. The cats got an easy meal.
A reliable food source, exactly.
And the humans got natural pest control.
Precisely. This mutualism, this sort of living alongside each other with both sides gaining something, likely continued for millennia. As agriculture spread, so too did these tamer, more human-associated cats. Later on, wild cats from Egypt did contribute to the genetic makeup of domestic cats, but the initial domestication event seems to have taken place earlier in the Near East.
It's fascinating to imagine those early interactions. When did these proto-house cats start to, venture further afield?
The earliest evidence we have of domestic cats in Greece dates to around 1200 BC. From there, it appears that Greek, Phoenician, Carthaginian, and Etruscan traders played a role in introducing them to southern Europe. By the 5th century BC, they are apparently quite common around settlements in Magna Graecia and Etruria.
So they traveled with trade routes?
Seems very likely. During the Roman Empire, they made their way to islands like Corsica and Sardinia before the 1st century AD, and by the end of the Western Roman Empire, around the 5th century, the Egyptian lineage of domestic cats had even reached a Baltic seaport in northern Germany. So they spread quite effectively alongside human travel and trade.
It sounds like they were furry little stowaways with valuable skills. Interestingly, I recall reading about another early instance of cat teaming in a completely different part of the world.
Ah, you're likely thinking of the leopard cat, Prionolorus bengalensis, in China.
Yes, that's it.
There's evidence of them being tamed independently around 5500 BC. However, and this is a crucial point, this line of partially domesticated leopard cats doesn't seem to have contributed genetically to the domestic cat populations we see today.
Oh, okay. So it was a separate thing entirely.
Exactly. It was a separate, independent instance of humans and felines interacting in a way that led to some level of taming,
Yeah.
but it didn't lead to the Felis catus we know.
So our modern house cats have that specific lineage back to the African wildcat, not this early Chinese example. That's an important distinction to make. Now, when you compare a house cat to a wildcat, have they changed significantly through this domestication process? They still seem remarkably capable of surviving on their own.
That's a very insightful observation. Unlike some other domesticated animals, cats have actually undergone relatively subtle anatomical and behavioral changes during domestication.
Right. They haven't changed as much as, say, dogs from wolves.
Exactly. They've retained many of the traits of their wild ancestors and are indeed still capable of surviving in the wild. In fact, several of their natural wildcat behaviors likely pre-adapted them for becoming pets. Consider their small size, their inherent social nature. Even though they are solitary hunters, they aren't entirely asocial. Their clear body language, their love of play, and their intelligence. Even their meticulous grooming habits and instinct to bury their waste probably made them more appealing to have around compared to some other animals.
Those pre-existing traits definitely smooth the path to domestication. And we've seen the development of distinct cat breeds much more recently, haven't we? That's a more recent phase of human influence.
Yes, the deliberate development of specific cat breeds really took off in the mid-19th century.
Okay, 1800s.
Right. Genetic analysis has shown that the ancestral wildcat genome underwent significant alterations through artificial selection as humans started favoring particular traits, leading to the diverse breeds we see today. However, it's important to remember that most breeds actually originated from randomly bred domestic cats.
Ah, so not all breeds were intentionally created from the start.
Not necessarily, no. The genetic diversity within these breeds can vary depending on the region, but it's generally lowest in purebred populations. This lower genetic diversity in purebreds also means they tend to have a higher incidence of certain inherited health issues. Over 20 such disorders have been identified.
So while we've created these specialized felines with specific looks and temperaments, there's a trade-off in terms of their genetic resilience. That's something worth considering. Okay, let's move on to the physical characteristics that define a cat. What are some of their key anatomical features?
Compared to their European wildcat relatives, domestic cats tend to have a smaller skull and shorter bones. On average, they measure around 46 centimeters, that's about 18 inches, in head-to-body length.
Okay.
They stand about 23 to 25 centimeters tall, roughly 9–10 inches, and their tail is about 30 centimeters or a foot long. As you've likely noticed, males are generally larger than females. Adult domestic cats typically weigh in at around 4 to 5 kilograms, so say 9 to 11 pounds. Relatively compact creatures.
Relatively compact, but incredibly agile. What aspects of their skeletal structure allow for that remarkable flexibility?
Their spine is crucial here. Like most mammals, they have 7 cervical vertebrae in their neck, but they have 13 thoracic vertebrae. We humans have 12.
One extra there.
And 7 lumbar vertebrae, where we have 5. This extra length in the thoracic and lumbar regions is what grants them that incredible spinal mobility and flexibility, allowing them to contort their bodies in ways that seem almost impossible. They also have 13 ribs attached to the spine, along with the shoulder and pelvis. And here's a key difference from us. A cat's forelimbs are attached to the shoulder by free-floating clavicle bones.
Unfree-floating.
Yes. Unlike our collarbones, theirs aren't rigidly connected, which is what enables them to squeeze through any space their head can fit into.
That perfectly explains how they can get into those seemingly impossible tight spots. It's all thanks to that unique free-floating clavicle.
What about their heads? Cats have quite distinctive skulls. Yes, the cat skull is quite unique among mammals, characterized by very large eye sockets and a powerful, specialized jaw. They have 2 long canine teeth, primarily designed for killing and tearing prey. These canines are positioned to effectively deliver a precise bite that can sever a small animal's spinal cord, leading to rapid paralysis.
Oof, efficient.
Very. Interestingly, Compared to other felines, domestic cats have relatively narrowly spaced canine teeth, which is an adaptation to their preferred prey of small rodents with their small vertebrae.
So their teeth are perfectly adapted to their hunting style. What about their other teeth? They don't seem to spend much time chewing their food.
You're right. The premolar and the first molar on each side of their mouth form what's called the carnassial pair. These teeth work together like a pair of incredibly sharp scissors, efficiently shearing meat into smaller, manageable pieces.
Like little meat scissors.
Exactly. This is vital because cats' smaller molars aren't really effective at grinding, and they're largely incapable of proper mastication. That is, grinding their food with their back teeth. Interestingly, despite this, cats tend to have better dental health than most humans.
Really? Why is that?
It's partly due to a thicker protective enamel layer on their teeth, saliva that's less damaging, less food getting trapped between their teeth, and a diet that's naturally very low in sugar. However, they can still experience tooth loss and infections.
So a very efficient dental design for their carnivorous diet. Now, one of the most iconic features of a cat, their claws. They seem to appear and disappear almost magically.
Absolutely. Cats have protractable and retractable claws. In their normal relaxed state, the claws are sheathed, tucked neatly into the skin and fur around their toe pads.
Right.
This keeps them incredibly sharp because they avoid wear from constant contact with the ground and allows them to stalk their prey silently. The claws on their front paws are typically sharper than those on their back paws. Cats can voluntarily extend their claws when they need them for hunting, fighting, climbing, kneading, or for better grip on soft surfaces. They also shed the outer layer of their claw sheaths by scratching on rough surfaces, so that scratching post is actually serving a biological need.
That scratching serves a vital purpose beyond just keeping our furniture in a state of disrepair then. It's like a natural maintenance routine for their claws. And how many claws do they typically have?
Most cats have 5 claws on their front paws and 4 on their rear paws. The dew claw, which is the claw on the inside of the front paw, is positioned a bit higher up. Interestingly, just above the dew claw, there's a small protrusion that looks a bit like a 6th finger. While it doesn't have a function in normal walking, it's thought to act as an anti-skidding aid when they're making quick jumps.
Like extra traction.
Kind of, yeah. Some cat breeds are also prone to having extra toes, a condition called polydactyly.
Extra toes, a quirky genetic variation. Okay, so they've got the sharp claws, the flexible spine. But how do they actually move around? That silent, graceful walk is so characteristic.
Cats are digitigrade, which means they walk on their toes. The bones in their feet actually make up the lower part of what we see as their legs.
Right.
Unlike most mammals, when they walk slowly, they often use a pacing gait, where both legs on the same side of their body move together. As they speed up to a trot, their gait shifts to a diagonal pattern with the diagonally opposite hind and forelegs moving simultaneously.
Pacing versus diagonal. Interesting.
And another key aspect of their movement is direct registration. When they walk slowly, they place each hind paw almost exactly in the track left by the corresponding forepaw.
Oh, wow.
This minimizes noise and visible tracks, which is obviously a significant advantage for a predator. It also provides more secure footing for their hind paws when they're navigating uneven terrain.
That silent hunter design in action. Now, along with their physical prowess, cats are renowned for their incredible senses. Let's start with their vision. Everyone knows cats can see in the dark, but how does that actually work?
Their night vision is truly exceptional. They can see in light levels about 1/6 of what humans require.
1/6.
Yes. This is partly thanks to a layer at the back of their eyes called the tapetum lucidum. Think of it like the reflective material on a bicycle reflector.
Right, the glowy eyes in photos.
Exactly. That layer reflects any light that passes through the retina back into the eye. This gives the light-sensitive cells a second chance to capture photons, significantly increasing their sensitivity in dim conditions. Their large pupils are also an adaptation to low light, allowing them to take in as much light as possible.
Makes sense.
Interestingly, domestic cats have slit pupils. This shape helps them to focus bright light without causing chromatic aberration, that sort of color fringing you can sometimes get with lenses. In very low light, their pupils can expand to cover almost the entire exposed surface of their eyes.
Wow.
However, when it comes to color vision, cats aren't quite as sophisticated as us. They only have 2 types of cone cells in their retinas, which are most sensitive to blue and yellowish green. Their ability to distinguish between red and green is limited.
So they see blues and yellows well, but reds and greens, less so.
Pretty much. Some research suggests they might have a third type of cone that responds to middle wavelengths, but it's more likely an adaptation for low light conditions rather than true three-color vision. Finally, they also have a nictitating membrane, that third eyelid.
Ah, yes, that weird inner eyelid.
That's the one. It allows them to blink to moisten and protect their eyes without fully obscuring their vision.
So, masters of seeing in the dark, but with a slightly different color perception than ours. What about their hearing? I've heard they can pick up sounds we can't even imagine.
Their hearing is indeed remarkably acute, especially in the range of 500 Hz to 32 kHz, which is where many of the sounds made by small prey fall.
Okay.
They can actually detect an extremely broad range of frequencies from 55 Hz all the way up to 79 kHz.
79,000 hertz.
Yes, far exceeding the human range of 20 Hz to 20 kHz.
Okay.
That's about 10.5 octaves compared to a roughly 9.
That's incredible.
Their hearing sensitivity is enhanced by their large, movable outer ears, the pinnae, which can act like tiny satellite dishes to amplify sounds and help them pinpoint the location of a noise with incredible accuracy. They can even detect ultrasound, including the ultrasonic calls made by rodents. Recent research has also shown that cats possess impressive sociospatial cognitive abilities. They can create mental maps of familiar people's locations just by the sound of their voices.
They're practically living radar systems. And what about their sense of smell? I know they use scent marking extensively.
Their sense of smell is also highly developed. This is partly due to a well-developed olfactory bulb in their brain and a large surface area of olfactory mucosa in their nasal passages, about twice the size of ours.
Twice the size, wow.
Yeah. Like many other animals, cats also have a Jacobson's organ in their mouths, which they use during the Fleeman response, that distinctive lip-curling behavior you sometimes see.
Oh yeah, the funny face they make.
Exactly. This organ allows them to detect certain aromas, particularly pheromones, in a way that we can't. They are incredibly sensitive to pheromones like 3-mercapto-3-methylbutane-1-ol, which they use for communication through urine spraying and scent gland marking.
Right.
And of course, many cats have a very strong reaction to plants containing nepentolactone, the active compound in catnip.
Ah, catnip.
They can detect it in concentrations of less than 1 part per billion, and it affects around 70 to 80% of cats. Interestingly, other plants like silver vine and valerian can produce a similar response, possibly by mimicking pheromones and stimulating their social or sexual behaviors.
Catnip, the ultimate feline indulgence. It's amazing how specific scents can trigger such pronounced reactions. What about their sense of taste? I know they're obligate carnivores, so their taste preferences must be quite different from ours.
They certainly are. Cats have relatively few taste buds compared to humans, only around 470 versus our more than 9,000.
Only 470.
Yeah, quite a difference. One key difference is that both domestic and wild cats share a genetic quirk that prevents their sweet taste receptors from working properly. So they essentially have no ability to taste sweetness.
Can't taste sugar at all.
No. This isn't a deficiency, but a reflection of their strict carnivorous diet. Why would they need to taste something they wouldn't naturally encounter? However, they do have specialized taste bud receptors for acids, amino acids, the building blocks of protein, and bitter tastes.
Okay.
They also possess the receptors needed to detect umami, that savory flavor. However, their umami receptors have some subtle differences that make them respond more strongly to compounds found in meat, like inosine monophosphate, IMP, and histidine, which are present in high concentrations in tuna.
Ah, so that's why so many cats love tuna.
It might well explain their fondness for it, yes. Researchers even suggest that umami might be as important to cats as sweet is to us. Interestingly, cats also have a distinct preference for food that's around 38 degrees Celsius.
Body temperature, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. Similar to the body temperature of fresh prey, they may even reject cold food, perhaps because it signals that the prey is no longer fresh.
No sugary treats for cats then, but definitely bring on the savory, slightly warm fish. Finally, let's talk about those incredible whiskers. They're not just cute facial adornments, are they?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
A cat's whiskers, also known as a vibrissae, are highly sensitive to touch and play a vital role in their navigation and sensory perception. They have dozens of these movable whiskers all over their body, but especially on their faces.
All over, not just the face.
Mostly the face, but also on their chins, above the eyes, and even on the forelegs. They provide crucial information about the width of openings, helping them determine if they can squeeze through. They also help them locate objects in the dark, both by directly touching them and by sensing subtle changes in air currents.
Air currents, really?
Yes, they're that sensitive. These sensitive whiskers even trigger protective blink reflexes to help prevent damage to their eyes.
So they're like an extension of their senses, helping them to feel their way through the world in a very direct way. It's also intricately designed.
Okay, now that we have a good understanding of their physical toolkit, let's delve into the fascinating world of cat behavior. What are some of their general activity patterns?
Outdoor cats tend to be active both during the day and night, though they do show a slight tendency towards being more nocturnal. Domestic cats, even those that venture outside, typically spend most of their time relatively close to their homes.
Uh-huh.
But their territories can extend for hundreds of meters. They establish these territories, and the size can vary quite a bit. One study found ranges between 7 and 28 hectares.
That's a decent area.
It is. While not strictly nocturnal, their activity patterns are often crepuscular, meaning they're most active around dawn and dusk, a pattern that makes sense for a low-light predator.
Right, prime hunting time.
Exactly. However, the behavior of house cats is also significantly influenced by human activity, and they can adapt their sleeping and waking patterns to some extent to align with their owners' routines. It's like they try to fit into our lives, at least a little. And speaking of routines, cats are famous for their love of sleep.
They certainly are. Cats conserve energy by sleeping more than many other animals, especially as they age. The amount of sleep they get daily varies, but it usually falls between 12 and 16 hours.
12 to 16 hours. Wow.
With some individuals even clocking up to 20 hours in a single day.
20 hours. That's most of the day.
It is. The term cat nap perfectly captures their tendency to doze lightly for short periods. Interestingly, during their sleep, they often experience brief periods of rapid eye movement sleep, often accompanied by muscle twitches, which suggests they do indeed dream.
Dreaming cats, the possibilities are endless. I wonder what kind of adventures they imagine. And what about their personalities? Are there any general behavioral traits we can expect?
Well, behavioral and personality traits in cats are really shaped by a complex interplay of both genetics and environmental factors. There's a common belief that certain coat colors are linked to specific personality types.
Like, torties have tortitude.
Yeah. Exactly, things like that. But the scientific evidence for this is actually quite weak and not consistently supported. So you can't really predict a cat's temperament based solely on its fur color.
So you can't judge a book by its cover or a cat by its coat. That's good to know. Let's talk about their social lives. Are cats truly solitary creatures, or is there more to their interactions?
The social behavior of domestic cats can range from individuals that are quite independent to feral cat colonies that form around a reliable food source.
Okay.
These colonies often consist of groups of related females who cooperate in raising kittens. Within these groups, there's usually a dominance hierarchy. Each cat in a colony will typically have its own distinct territory. Sexually active males tend to have the largest territories, which can be significantly larger than those of females and may overlap with the territories of several females. These territories are clearly marked using urine spraying, rubbing objects with secretions from facial glands at head height, and by defecation.
Right, the scent marking.
Exactly. Interestingly, there are often neutral areas between these territories where cats will observe and greet each other without territorial aggression. However, outside these neutral zones, the cats who hold a territory will usually chase away unfamiliar cats, initially using staring, hissing, and growling.
The standard warning signs.
Right. And if that doesn't work, they might engage in short, noisy attacks. While they don't have a social survival strategy in the way that pack animals do and they always hunt alone, they aren't entirely as social.
So a kind of loose social structure based on territory and resources. What about their interactions with us and other pets in our homes?
Living in close proximity to humans and other domestic animals has led to a remarkable symbiotic social adaptation in cats. They can develop very strong bonds and express considerable affection towards humans and even other animals in the household.
Yeah, definitely.
From an ethological perspective, a cat's human caregiver often functions as a sort of mother surrogate.
Like we're their big, clumsy moms.
Kind of. Adult cats, in many ways, retain kitten-like behaviors throughout their lives, a phenomenon called behavioral neoteny. Think about kneading or purring. These are behaviors seen in kittens interacting with their mothers that adult cats often direct towards their human companions.
Makes sense.
Their high-pitched meows, for instance, might even tap into our innate parental instincts, mimicking the cries of a hungry human infant. However, some pet cats can be poorly socialized. especially older cats who may exhibit aggression towards newly introduced kittens,
Oh, yes, that can be tricky.
a behavior known as feline asocial aggression. Redirected aggression is also quite common in multi-cat households. This occurs when a cat becomes agitated by something it can't directly target, like a noise outside, and then directs its frustration towards the nearest cat, pet, or even human.
Right, taking it out on someone else.
Pretty much. On a more positive note, the scent-rubbing behavior that domestic cats exhibit towards humans or other cats is thought to be a key way for them to establish and maintain social bonds.
That makes perfect sense. My own cat definitely treats me like a giant, occasionally clumsy fellow feline when she weaves between my legs and headbutts me. Let's talk about how cats communicate with each other and with us. It's not just meowing, is it?
Absolutely not. Domestic cats have a wide range of vocalizations for communication, including purring, trilling, hissing, growling, or snarling, grunting, and a surprising variety of meow sounds, each seemingly carrying a different meaning.
They have a whole vocabulary.
It seems like it. Their body language is also incredibly important. The position of their ears and tail, the overall tension or relaxation of their body, and even the kneading of their paws all provide valuable clues to their mood and intentions. The tail and ears are particularly important social signal mechanisms. A raised tail often indicates a friendly greeting, while flattened ears usually signal fear or aggression. Interestingly, raising the tail can also be related to their position in a social hierarchy, with more dominant individuals raising their tails less frequently than those lower down.
Huh. Didn't know that about the tail raising.
Yeah. Feral cats, perhaps because they have less need to communicate vocally with humans, tend to be generally silent. Nose-to-nose touching is a common greeting between cats and can often be followed by social grooming, which one cat usually initiates by raising and tilting its head.
So there's a whole silent language in their postures and movements. What about purring? It's often linked with contentment, but I've heard it can signify other things too.
Purring is a truly fascinating vocalization. It likely originated as a way for mother cats and nursing kittens to reassure each other. Kittens are thought to use it as a signal to solicit care.
Okay.
However, cats also often purr as a clear sign of contentment when they're being petted, feeling relaxed, or eating. But it's not always an indicator of happiness.
Right.
Purring has been observed in a wide variety of circumstances, many of which involve physical contact with a trusted individual. Some cats have even been observed to purr continuously when they are chronically ill or in apparent pain.
So they purr when they're hurt too.
Sometimes, yes. It seems to be a more complex physiological process than just an expression of pleasure. The current understanding of the mechanism behind purring involves a rapid cycle of contraction and relaxation of the laryngeal muscles, which control the opening and closing of the glottis, the space between the vocal cords.
Okay.
This rapid movement causes the vocal cords to vibrate, producing the characteristic purring sound, typically at a frequency between 25 and 33 hertz.
So it's a much more nuanced signal than simply happy cat. Maybe it even has a self-soothing function. What about facial expressions? Do cats have as many as we do?
Well, while they might not have the same broad range as us, researchers have actually observed a surprising 276 morphologically distinct facial expressions in domestic cats based on 26 different facial movements.
276, really?
Yep. It's thought that domestication may have influenced the development of these diverse expressions for various social functions. These subtle facial cues have even helped scientists develop tools like the feline grimace scale.
A grimace scale for cats.
Exactly. It uses criteria like ear position, the degree of squinting, tension in the muzzle, changes in whisker position, and head posture to help detect acute pain in cats, even when they aren't vocalizing.
That's incredible. A whole language in their faces that we're only just beginning to fully decipher. Now let's talk about another very noticeable cat behavior. Grooming. They dedicate a huge amount of time to licking their fur.
Yes. Cats are renowned for their meticulous grooming habits. They spend a significant portion of their waking hours licking their coats to keep them clean. Their tongue has a remarkable structure that greatly aids in this process. It's covered in hundreds of tiny backward-facing spines about 0.5 millimeter long called lingual papillae. These papillae are made of keratin, the same material as our fingernails, which makes them quite rigid. They essentially act like a very effective natural hairbrush.
Like built-in Velcro combs.
Exactly. However, this efficient grooming can lead to a common issue, especially in long-haired cats. Hairballs. These clumps of swallowed fur collect in their stomachs and are occasionally regurgitated.
Ugh, hairballs.
Yeah, not pleasant. There are various remedies available to help ease the passage of hair through their digestive system, and regular grooming with a comb or stiff brush by their owners can significantly reduce the formation of hairballs.
So their tongue is a built-in, incredibly effective grooming tool that's a clever evolutionary adaptation. What about their intelligence? We often hear that cats are intelligent, but in a different way than dogs.
Cat intelligence is a fascinating area. It encompasses their ability to solve problems, adapt to their environment, learn new behaviors, and communicate their needs. Structurally, a cat's brain shares some fundamental similarities with the human brain, including having a cerebral cortex responsible for complex processing,
Okay.
which contains around 250 million neurons. Cats also display neuroplasticity, meaning their brains can reorganize themselves based on their experiences. They have well-developed long-term memories, capable of retaining information for a decade or even longer.
A decade. Wow.
And these memories are often strongly linked to emotions, allowing them to recall positive and negative experiences associated with specific places. While they tend to excel in observational learning and problem-solving, think about how quickly they can learn to open a cupboard.
Oh, yes. Definitely seen that.
Studies suggest they may not grasp cause and effect relationships in exactly the same way that humans do. Much of our understanding of cat intelligence comes from observing domesticated cats. Living in complex urban environments presents them with challenges that require adaptive behaviors, likely contributing to their cognitive development.
Right.
Selective breeding and genetic factors also play a role in shaping their intelligence. Kittens learn essential survival skills by observing their mothers, while adult cats continue to refine their abilities through trial and error.
It sounds like they're masters of observation and learning from experience, perhaps with a different focus than, say, dogs, who are often more attuned to human commands. What about their playful behavior? That also seems like a core part of catness.
Absolutely. Domestic cats, particularly young kittens, are well known for their love of play. This isn't just for amusement. It actually mimics hunting behavior and is crucial for helping kittens develop the essential skills they need to stalk, chase, pounce, and kill prey.
So play is practice hunting.
Essentially, yes. Cats also engage in play fighting, both with each other and sometimes with humans. This kind of play is thought to help them practice the physical skills necessary for real combat and might also reduce any fear they might associate with launching attacks on other animals. Interestingly, cats tend to show more interest in play when they are hungry. Perhaps that heightened predatory drive kicks in. Because play is so closely linked to hunting, they generally prefer to play with objects that resemble prey, small, furry toys that move erratically.
Like a mouse or a bird.
Exactly. However, they can also lose interest in toys quite rapidly as they become habituated to them. While things like string are often used as toys, they can be very dangerous if ingested, potentially leading to serious and even life-threatening medical emergencies. Good warning there. Stick to safe toys. So play is serious practice for a kitten, helping them hone those innate hunting skills. Now, speaking of hunting, let's talk about how cats eat and drink. That delicate lapping of water is quite distinctive.
Yes, the shape and structure of a cat's cheeks actually don't allow them to create suction in the same way that we do when we drink.
Oh, interesting.
Instead, when they lap liquids like water, they touch the smooth tip of their tongue to the surface and then very quickly retract it in a precise, almost corkscrew-like motion, drawing water upwards into their mouths. They do this incredibly fast, about 4 times per second.
4 times a second?
Yeah. It's a very efficient, if somewhat unusual-looking, drinking technique.
A tiny rapid-fire water scooper in action. What about their feeding habits in general? Do they graze throughout the day or tend to eat larger meals?
Feral cats and house cats that are allowed to free feed typically consume multiple small meals throughout the day. The frequency and size of these meals can vary quite a bit from one cat to another.
So little snacks often? Kind of, yeah. They are quite selective about their food, choosing based on its temperature, smell, and texture. They generally dislike chilled foods and show the strongest preference for moist foods that are rich in amino acids, similar to what they would obtain from eating fresh meat.
Right, back to that fresh kill temperature preference.
Exactly. They also exhibit neophobia, meaning they tend to be wary of and may reject new or unfamiliar flavors, but they learn very quickly to avoid foods that have made them feel unwell in the past.
Smart. Don't eat what made you sick.
Precisely. Despite the common belief, not all cats enjoy milk or cream. In fact, most adult cats are lactose intolerant because they lack the enzyme needed to properly digest the lactose, the sugar found in milk, which can lead to digestive upset.
So this saucer of milk is actually not great for most cats?
Generally, no. Some cats also develop a condition called pica, where they persistently eat or chew on non-food items like wool, plastic, or paper, which can obviously be very dangerous depending on what and how much they ingest.
So small, frequent, and carefully chosen meals with a strong preference for the familiar and a healthy skepticism of anything new or that has caused problems before. Now, cats are also well known for being predators. What kind of impact do they have on local wildlife populations?
Cats are indeed highly effective hunters of small prey, primarily birds and rodents, which is why they have been historically valued for pest control. They will also hunt other small creatures like lizards and snakes.
Okay.
They employ two main hunting strategies: actively stalking their prey or waiting in ambush until an animal comes within striking distance. The strategy they use often depends on the type of prey they're targeting. For example, they might patiently wait near rodent burrows, but actively stalk birds.
Makes sense. Adapt the strategy.
Right. However, it's crucial to acknowledge that domestic cats, both feral and free-ranging pet cats, can have a significant and sometimes devastating impact on wildlife populations. In the United States alone, it's estimated that they kill billions with a bee of birds and mammals annually.
Billions. That's
Right.
a huge number.
It is. Certain bird species appear to be particularly vulnerable to cat predation. While cats are rarely the sole cause of a decline in bird populations, and in some instances, removing cats has led to unintended consequences like the increase of other predators.
Right, the mesopredator release effect.
Exactly. They are undoubtedly a contributing factor. They have been implicated in the decline and even extinction of several species, including the South Island piopio, the Chatham rail, and the New Zealand merganser, to name just a few.
Wow.
A particularly tragic example is the flightless Lyell's wren in New Zealand, which was driven to extinction only a few years after its discovery, largely due to predation by a single cat.
A single cat wiped out a whole species.
It appears so, yes. In a shocking incident, one feral cat in New Zealand was documented killing 102 critically endangered New Zealand lesser short-tailed bats in just 7 days.
Good grief.
Estimates from Australia suggest that feral cats kill an astounding 466 million reptiles per year, with over 258 different reptile species identified as prey. Cats have also been implicated in the extinction of the Navassa curly-tailed lizard and Kenia cocti, so the impact on native wildlife can be very substantial.
Those figures are truly startling. It really underscores the responsibility that comes with cat ownership and the management of feral cat populations. Now let's shift focus slightly and talk about the seemingly odd behavior of cats presenting their captured prey to their human companions. Why do they do that?
Ah, yes, the gift. This is a behavior that isn't entirely understood, and there are a few leading theories.
Okay, what are they?
One idea is that cats see humans as part of their social group and are essentially sharing their kill according to their social hierarchy, perhaps viewing us as being at or near the top and therefore deserving of the offering.
Like bringing tribute to the leader.
Sort of, yeah. Another theory suggests that they are attempting to teach their human caregivers how to hunt, almost as if we were inept members of their family who need to learn to provide for ourselves.
Like, look, dummy, this is how you catch a mouse.
Exactly. However, this hypothesis doesn't fully explain why male cats, who have minimal involvement in raising kittens, also frequently bring home prey.
Valid point.
So, while it's a common and often unsettling behavior for owners, the precise reason behind cats presenting us with their kills remains somewhat of a mystery.
The enduring enigma of the presented prey. It's just one of the many quirky things that make cats so endlessly fascinating. Now, let's touch on a less cuddly aspect of their behavior. Fighting. When and why do cats get into physical altercations?
Male cats are generally more likely to engage in fights than females. Among feral cat populations, the most common trigger for fighting is competition between males for the opportunity to mate with a female who is in heat.
Right, fighting over females.
Typically, the larger and more robust male tends to prevail in these encounters. Within a domestic setting, another frequent cause of fighting is the challenge of establishing and maintaining territories within a confined space, especially in multi-cat households.
Turf wars in the living room.
Pretty much. Female cats will also fight, primarily over territorial disputes or to defend their kittens. Neutering or surgical sterilization can often significantly reduce or even eliminate this aggressive behavior in many cases, which strongly indicates a hormonal link.
Ah, so neutering really helps with fighting.
It often does, yes. When cats are feeling aggressive or threatened, they often try to appear larger and more intimidating by raising their fur, arching their backs, and turning sideways. They might also hiss or spit, flatten their ears back to protect them, vocalize loudly with growls and snarls, and bare their teeth.
The classic Halloween cat pose.
Exactly. Fights themselves usually involve grappling, slapping with their forepaws, and biting. If a cat is in a defensive posture, it might throw itself onto its back to rake its opponent's belly with its sharp hind claws.
Ouch. Those back claws are nasty.
They can be. While serious injuries are relatively uncommon in typical cat fights because they tend to be brief, with the losing cat usually fleeing with some scratches. More intense fights over mating rights can result in deeper wounds. The primary concern with fight-related injuries is often the risk of infection from scratches and bites. Bites are also a significant route for the transmission of the feline immunodeficiency virus, or FIV.
Okay, FIV. Good to know.
Sexually active male cats, who are frequently involved in fights, often end up with noticeably scarred faces. Interestingly, cats are often willing to threaten animals much larger than themselves, such as dogs and foxes, if they perceive a threat to their established territory.
Brave little things, or just very territorial.
A bit of both, perhaps.
So a complex interplay of territorial disputes, mating competition, and the occasional disagreement within the household. It sounds like neutering plays a really important role in managing these behaviors. Let's move on to the continuation of the feline line, reproduction. How do cats go about producing the next generation?
Cats rely heavily on pheromone communication in their reproductive behavior. Female cats, known as queens, are polyestrous, meaning they experience multiple estrus cycles or periods of heat throughout the breeding season.
Polyestrous multiple cycles.
Right, typically lasting around 21 days each. In the Northern Hemisphere, the primary breeding season usually runs from early February to August, while in equatorial regions, they can breed year-round.
Okay.
When a female is in heat, she attracts multiple males, called tomcats. These males will often engage in intense fights amongst themselves for the right to mate with her.
Back to the fighting.
Yes. Initially, the female may reject the male's advances, but eventually she will allow mating to occur. Interestingly, the female often emits a loud yowl as the male withdraws.
Why the yowl?
This is because a male cat's penis is equipped with about 120 to 150 tiny backward-pointing spines, about a millimeter in length.
Spines? Seriously?
Yes. These spines are thought to provide the female with increased sensory stimulation upon withdrawal, which helps to trigger ovulation. It's called induced ovulation.
Wow. Nature is something else.
It is. After mating, the female will meticulously groom her vulva, and if another male attempts to mate with her immediately afterwards, she will likely attack him. After about 20 to 30 minutes of grooming, her cycle will repeat if she hasn't conceived.
Okay.
Because ovulation isn't always triggered by a single mating, a female might mate with multiple males while she's in heat. Furthermore, cats exhibit superfecundity.
Super what now?
Superfecundity. It means a female can mate with several different males during a single heat cycle, and as a result, different kittens within the same litter can actually have different fathers.
A litter with multiple dads? No way.
Yes, it's quite possible. After fertilization, the eggs undergo development, with the morula forming around 124 hours, early blastocysts at 148 hours, and implantation in the uterine wall occurring at 10 to 12 days. The gestation period for queens typically lasts between 64 and 67 days, with an average of 65 days.
About 2 months, then.
Roughly, yes. Litter sizes can range from just 1 kitten up to 6, with an average of around 3. Females can produce an average of 1.4 litters per year, but in some cases, up to 3.
They reproduce quite quickly.
They can, yes. Sadly, kitten mortality can be quite high before they reach 6 months of age, often due to factors like trauma from dog attacks or road accidents. First, litters tend to be smaller than subsequent ones. Kittens are usually weaned between 6 and 7 weeks of age, and they reach sexual maturity relatively early. Females between 5 and 10 months, and males between 5 and 7 months, although this can vary slightly depending on the breed. They typically reach puberty around 9 to 10 months old.
Very young.
Indeed. Kittens are generally ready to go to new homes at around 12 weeks of age, when they have become sufficiently independent from their mother. Surgical sterilization, spaying for females, and castration for males can be performed as early as 7 weeks to prevent unwanted reproduction.
7 weeks? That seems really early.
It can be done, yes. This surgery also helps to significantly reduce undesirable sex-related behaviors like aggression, urine spraying in males, and yowling in females, While traditionally performed around 6 to 9 months of age, it's increasingly being done before puberty, between 3 and 6 months. In the United States, it's estimated that about 80% of household cats are neutered.
A remarkably rapid reproductive cycle, and the fascinating possibility of multi-fathered litters. The feline world is certainly full of reproductive surprises. Now, let's talk about how long these creatures typically live and what key health considerations are important for cat owners to be aware of.
The average lifespan of pet cats has thankfully increased in recent decades. In the early 1980s, it was around 7 years.
Only 7?
Yes, but by 2014 and 2023, the average had risen to about 13 years.
That's a big improvement.
It is. Neutering has been shown to significantly increase life expectancy. One study found that castrated male cats live about twice as long as unneutered males, and spayed female cats live around 62% longer than unspayed females.
Wow, big difference.
Yeah. Beyond preventing unwanted litters, neutering also provides other substantial health benefits, such as a reduced risk of reproductive cancers. However, it's also important to be aware that neutering can decrease a cat's metabolism and increase their appetite, which can unfortunately lead to obesity if their diet isn't carefully managed. There has been some discussion around the practice of performing neutering before puberty, with some veterinarians raising concerns about potential metabolic effects, retarded closure of bone growth plates, and a possible increased risk of certain urinary tract issues.
So, neutering offers significant advantages for longevity and health, but needs to be considered in the context of a cat's overall well-being and lifestyle. What about specific diseases that commonly affect cats?
A significant number of heritable genetic disorders have been identified in cats, around 250.
250 genetic disorders.
Yes, and many of these are surprisingly similar to inborn errors of metabolism that occur in humans. Because of the high degree of similarity in mammalian biology, many feline diseases can actually be diagnosed using genetic tests that were originally developed for humans. And cats are even used as valuable animal models in the study of certain human diseases.
So, studying cat diseases helps humans too.
In many cases, yes. Common health issues in domestic cats include acute infections, parasitic infestations like worms, ticks, and fleas, injuries, and chronic diseases such as kidney disease, thyroid disease, and arthritis, particularly in older cats.
Right, the common ailments.
Fortunately, effective vaccinations are available for many common infectious diseases, and there are reliable treatments to eliminate most common parasites.
It's reassuring that there are so many parallels in health and disease between us and our feline companions, which greatly aids in diagnosis and treatment. Now let's zoom out a bit and consider the ecological role of domestic cats. They're found in almost every corner of the globe, aren't they?
Yes, the domestic cat is a truly cosmopolitan species, found across much of the world. They are incredibly adaptable and are now present on all continents except Antarctica.
Not Antarctica, okay.
And on a vast number of islands, even remote ones like the Kerguelen Islands. Their ability to thrive in almost any terrestrial habitat has unfortunately led to them being considered among the world's most invasive species in many regions.
Invasive? That sounds serious.
It can be. You can even find established feral cat populations on very small uninhabited islands. Feral cats have been documented living in a remarkably wide array of habitats, including dense forests, open grasslands, Arctic tundra, coastal areas, agricultural land, arid scrublands, bustling urban centers, and even freshwater and saltwater wetlands. Their adaptability is quite extraordinary.
So their adaptability is both a testament to their resilience as a species and a potential challenge for the delicate balance of local ecosystems. Why exactly are they considered invasive in so many places?
The issue of domestic cats being invasive stems from a couple of primary factors. Firstly, because they haven't undergone drastic physical changes from their wildcat ancestors, they can readily interbreed with existing wildcat populations.
Hybridization.
Exactly. This hybridization poses the significant threat to the genetic distinctiveness and integrity of some wildcat populations, as has been observed in Scotland, Hungary, and potentially the Iberian Peninsula, as well as in areas where protected natural habitats border human-dominated landscapes, like near Kruger National Park in South Africa.
Okay.
Secondly, and perhaps more significantly, the introduction of domestic cats to regions where no native feline predators exist can have a devastating impact on native wildlife populations, which haven't evolved the necessary defenses against this novel and efficient predator.
That makes clear sense. An introduced predator can severely disrupt the delicate balance of a naive ecosystem. And we've touched on feral cats briefly, but can you elaborate on what specifically defines a feral cat and the scale of their impact?
Feral cats are essentially domestic cats that were either born in the wild or have reverted to a wild state after being domesticated. They're typically unfamiliar with and wary of humans and roam freely in both urban and rural environments, generally avoiding human contact.
Right, they're not socialized to people.
Exactly. While their exact numbers are difficult to ascertain, estimates in the United States range from a staggering 25 to 60 million individuals.
25 to 60 million feral cats in the U.S.
That's the estimate, yes. Feral cats may live solitary lives, but more commonly they form large social groups known as colonies, which tend to occupy a specific territory and are usually centered around a reliable food source, such as dumpsters or areas when people intentionally feed them. Some well-known examples of feral cat colonies exist in Rome, around historical sites like the Colosseum and Forum Romanum, where volunteers often provide them with food and basic veterinary care. Public opinion on feral cats varies considerably, from people who view them as essentially free-ranging pets to those who consider them to be pests or vermin due to their impact on wildlife and potential for spreading diseases.
A very wide spectrum of viewpoints indeed. Now let's focus more specifically on the impact that these cats, both feral and free-ranging pets, have on wildlife. We've touched on the immense numbers, but can you provide us with some more specific and perhaps concerning examples?
On islands, where ecosystems are often particularly fragile and native species haven't evolved defenses against mammalian predators, birds can make up a very significant portion of a cat's diet, sometimes accounting for as much as 60%.
60% birds, wow.
Yes. While cats are rarely identified as the sole cause for declines in island bird populations, and in some instances, as we've discussed, the removal of cats has led to unintended ecological consequences like the increase of other predators, they are undoubtedly a major contributing factor.
Right.
They have been directly implicated in the decline and even extinction of several vulnerable species, including the South Island puopio, the Chatham rail, and the New Zealand merganser, to name just a few. A particularly poignant example, as we mentioned, is the flightless Lyle's wren in New Zealand, driven to extinction largely due to predation by a single cat.
Still mind-boggling.
It is. In that shocking documented case, one feral cat in New Zealand killed 102 critically endangered New Zealand lesser short-tailed bats in a single week. Estimates from the United States suggest that feral and free-ranging domestic cats kill an astonishing 6.3 to 22.3 billion mammals annually.
Billions of mammals.
Yes. The impact isn't limited to mammals and birds. In Australia, one extensive study estimated that feral cats kill a staggering 466 million reptiles per year, with over 258 different native reptile species identified as prey. Cats have also been implicated in the extinction of reptile species like the Navassa curly-tailed lizard and Keonia cocti. So the ecological impact on native wildlife can be devastating and far-reaching.
Those numbers and specific examples are truly alarming. It really highlights the significant ecological footprint of domestic cats and the considerable responsibility that comes with their presence in our world. Now let's shift our focus to a different aspect of their story. Their long history of interaction with humans. They've been our companions for millennia.
Indeed. Cats are incredibly common pets across the globe, with the worldwide population estimated to have exceeded 500 million back in 2007.
500 million.
Yeah. As of 2024, they were the second most popular pet in the United States, with nearly 74 million cats owned in over 42 million households. In the United Kingdom, around 26% of adults have a cat, with an estimated population of almost 11 million pet cats in 2020.
Huge numbers.
Absolutely. Global estimates from 2021 suggest around 220 million owned cats and a staggering 480 million stray cats worldwide. For thousands of years, cats have played a crucial role in controlling populations of rodents, particularly around grain stores and on ships.
The original pest controllers.
Exactly. A valuable function that continues to this day in some contexts. Historically, they have also been utilized in the fur trade and leather industries, although this practice has thankfully been outlawed in many parts of the world, including the United States and the European Union.
Good.
It's estimated that around 24 cats were needed to produce a single cat fur coat. In some cultures, cat pelts have even been used for superstitious purposes and in traditional medicine. For example, in certain regions of Switzerland, they are still sometimes made into blankets believed to alleviate rheumatism. Over the centuries, there have been various attempts to estimate the total global cat population, but general estimates tend to range widely from 200 million to 600 million. Interestingly, Walter Chandoha, a renowned photographer, dedicated his career to capturing images of cats. reportedly photographing around 90,000 individual cats throughout his lifetime.
90,000 cat photos. That's dedication.
It really is. In more recent times, we've observed a significant trend towards pet humanization, where cats are increasingly treated as cherished family members rather than simply traditional pets, often receiving a very high level of care, affection, and financial investment.
From working animals diligently controlling pests to pampered members of the family receiving gourmet meals, their role in our lives has certainly undergone a dramatic evolution. And there are even formal competitions in cat shows, aren't there?
Yes, cat shows are judged events where owners compete to win prestigious titles by having their cats evaluated against specific breed standards. To participate, cats often need to be in good health and have up-to-date vaccinations. Both pedigreed purebred cats and non-purebred domestic short hairs and long hairs can compete, although the specific rules and categories may vary depending on the organizing body. Experienced judges assess the cats based on how closely they conform to the established breed standard for their particular variety, as well as evaluating their overall temperament and condition.
A bit like dog shows, but with perhaps a touch more feline independence and less enthusiastic obedience, I imagine. Now, given our close and often intimate interactions with cats, it's important to be aware of any potential health risks. Can cats transmit diseases to humans?
Yes, unfortunately, cats can be infected or infested with a variety of viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoans, arthropods, or worms that have the potential to transmit diseases to humans, a phenomenon known as zoonosis.
Zoonosis, animal to human disease.
Correct. In some cases, the cat might not even display any outward signs or symptoms of the disease, yet it can still be transmitted to a person. The likelihood of a person becoming ill following exposure depends on their age and overall immune status.
Okay.
Individuals living in close proximity to cats, or those who have cats in their household, are generally at a higher risk of infection. Transmission can occur through direct contact, such as petting or being scratched, or indirectly through contact with contaminated cat feces or parasites present in their fur or environment.
Makes sense.
Some of the zoonotic infections that are of most concern include salmonella infection, cat scratch disease, and toxoplasmosis. It's always advisable to practice good hygiene when interacting with animals to minimize these risks.
Important reminders for anyone sharing their life and home with a feline companion. Now, to bring our deep dive toward a close, let's explore the historical and mythological significance of cats. They've certainly captured our imaginations across countless cultures and throughout history.
Absolutely. In ancient Egypt, cats were not merely pets. They were deeply revered and held a sacred status. The powerful goddess Bastet was frequently depicted in feline form, sometimes also taking on the more formidable aspect of a lioness.
Bastet, the cat goddess.
Exactly. The esteemed Greek historian Herodotus even documented that the killing of a cat was strictly forbidden, and when a beloved household cat passed away, the entire family would go into mourning and shave their eyebrows as a profound sign of grief.
Shave their eyebrows. Wow.
Yes. Deceased cats were often carefully embalmed and then taken to the sacred city of Bubastis, where they were interred in dedicated sacred burial sites. Herodotus himself expressed considerable astonishment at the sight of domestic cats in Egypt, having previously only encountered wild cats. In ancient Greece and Rome, while weasels were initially favored as rodent controllers, cats gradually gained popularity. The ancient Greek word for cat was aloros, which poetically translates to thing with a waving tail.
That's beautiful.
Isn't it? However, cats are relatively infrequently mentioned in early Greek literature. Later on, the Greeks syncretized their goddess Artemis with the Egyptian Bastet, essentially merging Bastet's strong associations with cats and attributing them to Artemis. Even in Ovid's Metamorphoses, when the deities flee to Egypt and assume animal forms to hide, the goddess Diana famously transforms herself into a cat.
Diana as a cat.
During the Middle Ages, many of Artemis's feline associations were transferred to the Virgin Mary, and cats are often depicted in religious art from that period. As the Age of Discovery dawned and maritime trade expanded, domestic cats spread even further around the globe, serving as indispensable ship's cats.
Good old ship's cats.
To control rodents in the cargo holds, and also being widely regarded as bringers of good luck to the voyages. Across various ancient religions and cultures, cats have been viewed as possessing exalted souls, serving as spiritual companions or guides for humans, often believed to be all-knowing, yet remaining silent, so as not to interfere with human decisions.
All-knowing but silent guides. Interesting concept.
It is. In Japan, the charming maneki neko, the beckoning cat figurine, is a well-known and beloved symbol of good fortune and prosperity.
The lucky cat.
It's the one. In Norse mythology, Freyja, the revered goddess of love, beauty, and fertility, is famously depicted as riding a chariot drawn by magnificent cats.
Freyja's cat chariot. Amazing.
Even in Jewish and Islamic traditions, cats hold a respected, though not sacred place. A prominent companion of the Prophet Muhammad, Abu Huraira, was even affectionately known as Father of the Kitten due to his documented fondness for cats.
So, from divine figures to bringers of good fortune, cats have certainly woven themselves deeply into the fabric of human belief systems and cultural narratives across the ages. What about specific superstitions? There are still quite a few surrounding felines, especially black cats.
Yes, many cultures continue to harbor both positive and negative superstitions about cats. The classic example is the persistent belief that encountering a black cat crossing your path will lead to bad luck.
Yeah, that one's still around.
Or the enduring notion that cats are closely associated with witchcraft, serving as witches' familiar spirits and enhancing their magical abilities. The medieval practice of ritualistic cat killings in the Belgian city of Ypres, which is now ironically commemorated by the annual Kattenstoet, or Cat Parade.
A cat parade commemorating cat killings, that's dark.
It is, yes. It serves as a stark reminder of some of the darker and more troubling historical associations. Even in 16th century France, cats were reportedly burned alive in public for entertainment, and their ashes were sometimes kept for their supposed power to bring good luck.
Grim stuff.
Indeed. Interestingly, the widely held myth of cats possessing multiple lives is prevalent across many cultures, with numerous countries believing they have 9 lives,
9 lives, the classic.
while others attribute them with 7 or even 6 lives. This enduring myth likely stems from their remarkable natural agility and their astonishing ability to quickly right themselves when falling, often landing safely on their feet, a reflex that was first scientifically documented in the mid-16th century.
From revered deities in ancient civilizations to symbols of both good and bad luck in later cultures, the cat's journey through human history and mythology is truly a fascinating and often contradictory tale.
It certainly is, a real mix of reverence and suspicion throughout history.
Okay, so to bring our deep dive to a close, it's abundantly clear that from their ancient domestication and remarkable sensory capabilities to their intricate social dynamics and significant impact on the environment, cats are far more complex and captivating than simply furry companions.
Definitely.
We've explored their evolutionary journey from the African wildcat, their unique anatomy perfectly adapted for their lifestyle, their intriguing and sometimes enigmatic behaviors like purring and the presentation of prey, and their deeply interwoven place in human history and mythology.
What's truly striking is how this animal, seemingly so independent and self-sufficient, has managed to forge such a profound and enduring relationship with us, deeply influencing our cultures, our homes, and indeed the ecosystems around us.
It really has. This raises a vital question for you, our listener. Considering the delicate balance that cats navigate between being independent hunters and deeply bonded companions and their undeniable ecological impact, what does our responsibility look like in ensuring both their well-being and the health of the ecosystems they inhabit?
It's a complex question with no easy answers.
Definitely something to think about. Perhaps the next time you encounter a cat, you'll contemplate not only its inherent charm, but also the long and incredibly fascinating story that has brought it into your world. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.